What's going on, Bulls fans? Welcome to another episode of Chicago Bulls Central, your number one spot for everything Chicago Bulls related. And on today's episode, we got Jamal from Bulls Central in the building having a conversation with me about our Chicago Bulls, some of the expectations, the team's last games, today's game against the Miami Heat. We also get into that. Zach Lavine's contract. We get into a little bit of everything Chicago Bulls. This is an interview and a collaboration a lot of you guys have been asking for quite a while. I'm happy to finally be able to bring that to you. So let's go ahead and get into today's episode of Chicago Bulls Central.
You are now tuned in to Chicago Bulls Central, your number one place for all Chicago Bulls news and content.
Well, ladies and gentlemen, I have an episode that I'm excited to bring you with a great guest. We have Jamal from Bulls Central in the building. What's going on, Jamal?
How you doing, buddy? Thanks for having me.
Anytime, man. I'm doing good. Coming off day after a big Chicago Bulls win, so that always feels better, right?
Absolutely.
What was your reaction to the Bulls not only being able to come back and tie that game, but eventually winning it?
Well, I mean, I think I thought the Bulls were losing this game. I had a post-game video last night, and I was talking about, I think it was, midway through the third quarter. They didn't look like they had the fight in them to be able to pull off a win. All the momentum was on the Clippers side, and it just looked like another one of those games where they're going to be coming up short. And it's disappointing as a fan because you've been seeing that a lot recently, and they haven't had the edge that they used to at the beginning of the season. But then a switch completely got flipped in the fourth quarter. Demar DeRozan did his thing and took over. And I think what impressed me the most about this win, or at least what got me the most excited as a fan for a win like this, is that this is the type of win that you need going into closing out the regular season and going into the postseason.
Yeah.
That kind of win that gives you the confidence to say, hey, we can come back as long as we just play hard, we keep fighting, we make the adjustments that are necessary, and we can do this. And so I think that was what encouraged me the most as a fan, to say, like, hey, this is the type of win we need. We can get that swagger back that we had at the beginning of the season, even if we are not fully healthy, and despite the fact that we don't have Lonzo Ball. So that was my initial reaction, was that this is more than just, a good comeback win that they won in overtime that DeMar DeRozan got 50 points in, which was great. It was more so this can be a win that sets the tone going into the playoffs, which is what they need, because every other team right now in the East, it seems anyway, is playing their best basketball. You're not seeing that from the Bulls most recently until last night.
Definitely. Now, I know we kind of just jumped into the game. Was excited to get your thoughts on that game, but first we got to do it. Anyone who I'm sure that follows me at this point is subscribed to you on YouTube, because it's well deserved. You being, I think, officially now the biggest Bulls channel on YouTube, and the hard work that you put in since you started the channel, I got to commend you on, Jamal. And I just, as a Bulls fan, I wasn't a heavy YouTube watcher before I got on YouTube myself. So like seeing the effort and the consistency that you put into your channel is motivating, man. And I know the Bulls community and Bulls Nation really appreciate you for it, man.
Thanks, man. No, I appreciate that. I mean, it is a lot of work, right? As you know, I mean, you're doing it as well, and doing it consistently, but it's also a lot of fun. It's like, it's a lot of work, but it's a passion, and it's something that is enjoyable. When you really enjoy what you're doing, the work doesn't seem as challenging. That's for sure.
Yeah, definitely. Listen, I will say this though. Those West Coast trips kill, because I go live after games. The West Coast trips kill me. They kill me. There's nothing but pure love for this team that gets me through the games that don't end until 12:30 past midnight my time. So
yeah, well, I don't know if you know, but I'm on the West Coast, so I'm based in the Bay Area now. I've been living in the Bay for the last 10 years or so. Came out here for a job and been working here ever since. So the West Coast trips are a little bit easier for me. But the Bulls haven't really been doing that well on the West Coast most recently. They did that first time, right, when they came out here out west. The first time they came out, they actually did pretty well, aside from that game against the Warriors, which I attended, which was not a fun game. But then, the second go around when they came out west wasn't that great. So
yeah, for sure. So one thing, I got to commend you on the video you did. and that was that if the Bulls miss the playoffs, Zach Lavine is gone. Because I know that is not an easy video to make with the way that this fan base is sometimes. When you were putting that video together, and your thoughts that went into there, were you ever worried that there may be backlash from the fan base because of that video?
Well, here's the thing.
Yeah,
A lot of people react to titles from a video.
yeah,
Um, by no means in that video. So that was actually a hot takes video. It was a hot
yeah.
take from one of my
Mailbag.
subscribers, and
Yeah,
so a lot of people think, "Oh, he's putting this title together. This is his view." That being said, I still responded to it, and in
yeah.
that, first of all, the Bulls are not going to miss the playoffs. That's even more evident now. They are going to make the playoffs.
Only could drop as
They're not.
low as 6th, I believe. So
Yeah, exactly. Like
yeah,
I think there was a stat that came out after the win last night that all they have to do is win one more game, or the Cavs lose one more game, for them to not actually go into the play-in.
hmm,
And even if they were to go into the play-in of the 7th seed, you'd like to think that 2 games home court advantage, they would be able to get into the playoffs. But that aside, they're not
yeah,
going to miss the playoffs. But someone said, in their hot take that if the Bulls miss the playoffs, that Zach Lavine and Billy Donovan will be gone. Um,
gotta love fans.
uh, I mean, and so first of all, I was like, the Bulls are not going to miss the playoffs, but if they were to, because at
Mm,
that time it still wasn't an absolute certainty, um, Billy Donovan will not be gone because I think the front office is really, committed to Billy Donovan, and they were pretty gung ho about hiring him when he
yeah,
became available after the bubble, and so to kind of go back on that, it'd be almost more of a pride thing. But for Zach Lavine, um, honestly, I don't know. I feel like if the Bulls were to miss the playoffs, he probably would be. And I said that in the sense that it would be a mutual parting. In other
yeah,
words, the Bulls would probably realize, you know what? Zach Lavine probably isn't the guy that we want to build a franchise around. And for Zach Lavine, missing the playoffs yet again, yeah, he's probably going to want to go in a different direction to where he could potentially win. It's a moot point anyway because the Bulls are going to make the playoffs. I'm sure Zach Lavine is going to resign. But as far as your question is, putting out a video like that and
mhm,
knowing that there's going to be backlash from fans, yeah, it's hard. But sometimes you just kind of have to be realistic as a fan
yeah,
in where this team is, where certain players are, what the expectations are. Um, I think that's what makes a good channel is one that's a fan, that's obviously biased, but also tries to be realistic and objective as possible.
absolutely, absolutely. Objectivity is key in this, for sure, for sure. So with everything and how this season been, from the highs, the exceeding expectations, to the injuries, the COVID, to the bad stretch after the All-Star game, um, where do you sit at with this team? Uh, Evaluating it objectively, like regardless of what happens in the playoffs, where are you at? You think that this team is going forward, and just your opinion on overall
So the team going forward, talking about next year, or at least just for this season.
for this season, for the rest of this season?
Yeah, I mean, the Bulls are going to make the playoffs. They're likely either going to be the 5th or the 6th seed.
Mm,
At this point, I was thinking about it last night. It doesn't really matter whether they're the 5th or the 6th seed because that top four is kind of going back and forth, right? You had the
yeah,
Heat fall. Now they're back up to number one. The Celtics were number one for a little bit. Now they're at number three. The Sixers have been dropping a little bit. They're number four. So if the playoffs
yeah.
were to start today, the Bulls would be taking on the Sixers, which is not going to be a fun matchup.
At all.
But as far as my where I kind of see it going for the expectations for the season, I think you're likely going to see a first round exit. I would like to
Mhm,
say that that's not going to be the case, but given what we're seeing from these top four teams, what they're doing right now, how the Bulls are playing, again, the win last night was really great because that sets up that confidence and that momentum going into the playoffs. I see it being a tall order for the Bulls to actually make it past the first round.
mhm,
So they're probably going to be playing the Sixers or the Celtics based on where the standings are right now because the Heat and the Bucks have created enough separation.
yeah,
Those that 3 and 4 seed between the Celtics and the Sixers. I think the Bulls have a chance potentially against the Celtics. The reason I say that is because they match up with that team a little bit better.
mhm,
The fact that Robert Williams is out, he might be back by the playoffs. I'm not sure, but the fact that he's out gives them a little bit of an advantage when it comes to size. Whereas if you're going against the Sixers, it's going to be a nightmare going against Joel Embiid, and not even just Embiid, the rest of the team that they have.
Yeah.
They're a really good team. Um, so I think that if we were to see a Bulls Celtics matchup, there's a possibility that the Bulls could make a run, especially if they play with the kind of confidence that they did last night. If we see any sort of semblance of what they were playing like at the beginning of the season, let's say
Mhm.
Lonzo Ball also comes back, which still kind of in doubt, but a possibility. Then there's a chance, and I think it would be amazing for them to be able to get out of the first round, even not having home court advantage. But I think even a first round exit, disappointing as it is for a fan for that to happen, the
Mhm.
fact that the Bulls are making the playoffs, something that they haven't done in close to 5 years.
Yeah.
They've had a fun and exciting team, a relevant team, which for any Bulls fans is great to have because you just haven't had that in so long. That's something to be positive to be taken away from. And I think going forward, how do you figure out how you build on that going into next season? What do you do with Zach Lavine, who's going to be coming up for his contract? How do you make sure that DeMar DeRozan's still going to be playing at the same level that he
Yeah.
is right now?
Wow.
How do you make sure you get Lonzo Ball healthy? So I think that there's still pieces to build on for this team going forward. So I don't think that Bulls fans should view this as a first round exit and that was all they were able to get out of this, massive all these moves that they made this offseason. It's like, well, they're still building. You know what I mean? Like I don't think
Mhm.
anyone really, at least who were thinking realistically speaking, thought this was going to be a title contending team in the
Exactly.
preseason. A good team, a team that can make the playoffs, and they are, but they're not a title contending team. It doesn't mean that they're still building towards that. They cannot build towards that. They are going to build towards that. So that's sort of my viewpoint as far as like where the season's going to be going for the rest of this year. And I'm just happy the Bulls are going to be back in the playoffs. I don't know
That
about you.
yeah, that's where I sit as well. It's been a fun season. Overall, it's been a fun season. The lows have sucked. Don't get me wrong, but overall, just seeing DeMar have this season at this age has been crazy to watch. Um, it's just been a fun season. I think if we can ever stay healthy, it's going to be a really interesting team to watch. And I think AK and Eversley are going to vastly improve this bench as well as other aspects of this team in the offseason. So we'll see what happens with that. One of the biggest dividing factors of players, divisive players, I guess is the better way to phrase it, in the Bulls fan base right now is Patrick Williams. Some people see the potential in Patrick Williams. Some people don't. Even if they see the potential, they don't want to wait. They want to see him traded for a superstar now. Where do you sit at currently with Patrick Williams? Where they're like, how good do you think he can be? I don't like the Kawhi comparisons. I make more of a Luau Deng comparison. But where do you sit at with Patrick Williams as a player?
Yeah, I mean, the Kawhi comparisons are a bit overblown. I mean, it
Yeah,
doesn't mean that he could potentially get there one day. I mean, he has a high ceiling, and I think
yeah,
anybody that watches basketball, knows basketball can see that. It's whether or not he's gonna be able to reach that. I do like the Luol Deng comparison better,
yeah,
right? Because I think that's probably a bit more realistic speaking.
yeah.
Um, as far as where I stand on that, I'm definitely more on the patient side.
Okay.
I don't think that you just say we don't want to wait for Patrick to develop because you know we have to win now. I don't think that is really the approach that this team sits at right now. Obviously,
Mhm.
yeah, you fast track the timeline because DeMar DeRozan is 32 years old. Vucevic, he's on an expiring contract. He's going to be 32 next season. So the timelines don't really make a ton of sense when you have Patrick Williams, who is only 20 years old.
Mhm.
Um, but I think it would be a mistake to jump the gun and trade a guy who has shown those flashes of potential. And you saw that last night when he is being more aggressive.
Yeah,
And he's being more assertive on the court. I think the challenge with Patrick right now is just the lack of confidence. And it's because he's been out for so long. Really, he had two injuries because he had the injury in the offseason. Then he obviously got the really bad injury that nearly put him out for the whole season,
yeah,
5 games into the year. And so to have him come back now, he's not going to be the amazing player that you want him to be after being out for so long. So I personally think that it makes more sense to wait for Patrick unless you're getting some sort of crazy return for him that some team just really, really wants Patrick Williams
yeah.
and you're getting an incredible haul for him in return in the form of a trade. Um, that makes a little bit more sense But like I said, I'm definitely in the camp of wait, see how Patrick develops, because you don't want to give up a player that down the line becomes an all-star. And at that point, what are where are you at as far as like, have you already started rebuilding because you
Yeah,
couldn't wait for a player to develop
true.
into what he could potentially come?
Yeah, this Patrick Williams ceiling, you can't even measure it right now. He's so young, so still inexperienced, has so much learning to do. It's hard to really know just how good Patrick Williams could be. That's why when we talk about trading him, I'm like, why would you do that? Like it's I don't get it. I know Bulls fans, and I think this season has really been, up and down for a lot of fans because we at the high of this, they saw that this team was so close to finally being that contender that Bulls fans want so badly that then they tried to fast track everything else. And the truth is, it was somewhere in the middle. And I think when you look at the future of a team, a player like Patrick Williams, who's versatile, who still has a lot of room to grow, you keep that player on your team. Unless something, like you said, unless an amazing deal presents itself, you keep Patrick Williams on your team.
Yeah. Well, I mean, and that's the other thing is it's like Patrick Williams, he had a good rookie season. It wasn't
Yeah,
like an incredible rookie season by any means, but he made all rookie second team. I think the thing that Bulls fans also fail to understand is that his trade value probably isn't that high right now.
that's another good
So it's
point.
like even if
Yeah.
you wanted to trade him, it's like, why would you give up scraps? Because not a lot of teams are probably going to want to pay a lot for him. Yes,
Mhm.
he's a young prospect and he has a lot of potential, but there's also a lot of unknowns about him, especially coming back off an injury. And because he's not showing a ton of confidence, teams aren't going to be like, yeah, we really want Patrick Williams, and here's everything we're going to give for you in return.
Yeah.
So it's like, why trade him when you're probably not going to get the best return? He still has that potential. Wait it out a little bit. I think that's the thing with fans, right? A lot of fans are impatient.
Yeah.
I'm one of those more patient fans.
Yeah.
Even when the win now window has been fast tracked, it's like I'm still on the more patient side. Even with Kobe White, I mean, I've said before about Kobe is like, does he really fit the long-term picture of this team given how, you know, crowded they are in the backcourt? You've got
Mhm.
Io, who developed a lot more quickly, or at least showed a lot more than people probably thought was going to happen in his rookie season. Obviously, they just signed Lonzo Ball to a 4-year deal. Where does Kobe fit in the long-term picture of this team? But even with that, it's like I'm not like, yeah, trade Kobe. It doesn't make sense for this team. He's still 21 and he's a good scorer off the bench. Like you,
Yeah.
you don't need to make these drastic decisions, which is why I think the front office didn't pull the trigger on a lot of these moves at the
Exactly.
trade deadline, because it's like unless we're getting a lot of value in return, we don't necessarily need to make the moves right now. And I think that's why it's like you got to be patient in these instances where there's players that do still have that upside,
Mhm.
and you don't want to make these snap decisions because you feel like you need to win a championship now.
You hit the nail on the head there. And one of the things that I've been saying too is that even if this Bulls team were to say, "Hey, we are going to make a move. We're gonna trade Patrick. I mean, not Patrick Williams, Kobe White, or whatever else." It really always made more sense to wait at least until the draft because then at that point they can
Yeah.
package their own first round pick to try to do something because they couldn't do that at this trade deadline.
Right.
And at the end of the day, I think AK and Eversley have earned the right for us to trust them and see that they're going to make a mistake at some point, but at
Yeah.
this point, they've earned, they have their eye focused on improving this team. They've earned the right for us to trust them as much as possible. And let's see what they do in this offseason. I really do think that we're going to come back with a lot of the holes and things that we saw that became issues with this team. AK and Eversley are going to do the best that they can to improve that. And we're going to have an even better team next year.
Absolutely. I mean, that's the thing, right? Is it's like you got a competent front office now. Even for maybe some of the mistakes that they have made, it's nothing like the previous front office. And so
Thank
even
God.
even even if things don't work out just like we wanted them to,
Yeah,
that down the line they're going to be able to make the proper and right decisions for this team going forward.
absolutely. Now, you mentioned proper and right decisions. So I got to ask it because I got you here. Zach Levine, if he I don't think he's gonna I really and some people I did a live stream and I said I don't think Zach's gonna qualify for the Supermax. People said I was crazy. But I really think with the knee thing and the recent play, I don't know if he's gonna make an all NBA team. But all that being said, if he does, do you think they should? I think they will either way, but do you think they should offer Zach Lavine the supermax contract if it becomes
The
available?
Supermax, it's funny, I had Tony Gill on the channel yesterday, and I asked him this question because I feel like it's one of the most controversial questions.
Yeah.
And whenever I do ask this question, I never get like a straight it's like, "Well, he's gonna get paid." It's
Yeah.
like, he's
Yeah.
gonna get paid because the Bulls don't really have a ton of other options. Um, and it's like, well, that wasn't really the question. It's more of, do you think that they should?
Yeah.
If he does qualify for the supermax, which I think you're right at this point, I don't think he's going to qualify. I don't see him making even third team All NBA because of the recent play, and it's not really, I mean, a lot on Zach. A lot of it is because of the injury. He's even said himself that he's not 100%. So I would be very surprised if he qualified for the supermax. Let's
Yeah.
say that he does. No, I don't think that he should get the supermax. And the reason I say that is because I mean, you look at some of the other players who are getting supermax contracts.
Mhm.
Guys like Giannis. Um, Actually, I think Rudy Gobert is on a supermax contract. He's probably the only one where it's like,
Oh,
He's
wow.
on a supermax contract." But like, you compare them to like these superstar top level tier one type players.
Mhm.
Is Zach Levine at that level? I don't think that he is.
Yeah.
And sometimes I get labeled as a Zach hater on my channel. It's not that I'm a Zach hater. It's just that I recognize where he is right now relative to superstar level players in this league, and
Mhm.
he's just not at that level yet. He could potentially get there, but he's not there yet. And so it would be really hard to give Zach Levine a supermax contract extension. The challenge, though, is what else are you going to do if you're the Bulls?
Yeah.
Because you kind of are getting put in a position where you're going to need to keep him. Because if you don't, that's really going to disrupt everything that they've been trying to do up until this point. Because then what happens with DeMar DeRozan? Does DeMar DeRozan get disgruntled because now Zach Levine's gone? What happens with Nikola Vucevic's expiring contract? And so
Mhm.
I think you're kind of put in this place where you're probably going to have to pay him a max contract. Whether or not he is worth one is kind of beside the point. But to your question, do I think that they should? No. But I think that they're going to have to ultimately. But I don't
Yeah.
think he's going to qualify for a super max. So I was mainly saying that for a max contract because he is going to
Yeah.
be max contract eligible.
Oh yeah, the max contract. I've stopped even fielding questions. He's going to get the max, and we can talk about if he deserves a max or not all day. And I understand there are some legitimate questions there if Zach Levine is actually a max contract player. But I think the fact that he was on a fairly reasonable deal per his output, the fact that he stuck around through everything that happened, he's going to get the max. So
Yeah.
like, yeah.
Well, I'll turn the question over to you. Do you think that if he becomes supermax eligible, that he should get a supermax contract?
No, there's no way in hell. I'm sorry. Like, I'm just gonna be frank. Like, there's no way because when you look at even the knee issue this season, right? The fact that it's not structural and nobody knows really why it is. Like, to give that the super max to a player who has not by himself gotten this team to be a playoff team, hasn't really accomplished much outside of being a very good player. Like Zach is a very good player. Don't get me wrong in that, but it's not like he's done enough, I think, on his own to where I would feel comfortable giving him the super max.
Yeah.
So
Well, and I think the clutch factor is really important.
yeah, that's
Last night, it was all DeMar DeRozan, and whether
yeah,
maybe that's by circumstance, right? Like if DeRozan wasn't around, maybe that would have been Levine. But the
mhm,
fact of the matter is, this season we haven't seen much of a clutch factor with Zach. It's always been DeMar. And when you think about a player that is a number one option on a team, a number one option on a championship building team, which if you're giving someone a supermax contract, that's what you expect of them. And we're not seeing that from Zach Levine. And I think you're right. It doesn't take away from Zach as a player.
yeah,
He's still an incredible player. He is an all-star level player, but not all-star level players that, put up 25 points a game like he does get supermax contracts. They
that's true.
don't, right? And so that's sort of my whole perspective on it. And I don't. I think some people take offense to that. Like it's like, well,
Yeah,
you're not a fan of Zach. Then it's not that I'm a fan of Zach. It's that you look at him relative to other players at that superstar level, and I just don't see him there yet.
definitely, definitely. So we've seen an amazing season, renaissance from DeMar DeRozan in many ways. What percentage are you putting that DeMar can have? I don't think ever this exact same season, but how much can he replicate what he gave us this season in the future? And how does that change the way that the Bulls build this team out in the upcoming
Yeah,
season?
it's a really good question. I see it probably unlikely that he would put together a season like this next season or the following season, which will be the final year of his contract.
Mm,
Um, and I say that because, in a way, aside from last night, you kind of already saw DeMar coming a little bit back down to earth, right? Like he
mhm.
wasn't as efficient with his shot. He wasn't just dominating and taking over in the fourth quarter. His decision making to an extent wasn't maybe the best. It's like,
Yeah.
it's like, and I say that about Zach too, is, there's certain situations where they just kind of get that tunnel vision and they're just playing that ISO basketball where they're trying to score as quickly as they can because the team's down and they need, a bucket. Um, so I say that because in a way you kind of saw that from DeMar DeRozan in the recent slump that the Bulls have been going through, is you've
Mm,
kind of seen him come back down to earth a little bit. And obviously still a great player, right? It's not like, oh, DeMar is now, trash. It's like, no, he's still an incredible player. It's just
yeah.
that um, he's not going to be able to sustain that level of efficiency that we saw at the beginning of the season. And so I think going into next season, he's still going to be a great player. He's still probably going to be an all-star. He's going to get you more than 20 points per game, which is great. But as far as your question, like him replicating what we've seen this year,
Yeah.
I think it's probably unlikely, especially now that he's gonna be 33. And
Yeah.
then as far as, like, the second part of your question, well, what do the Bulls do then if he's not gonna be able to put up the DeMar DeRozan type numbers we've seen this year? I mean, that's really for the front office to try to figure out how you hone the rest of this roster and how you put together a cohesive unit, really talking about the front court, right? Making sure that we have the proper pieces that give us enough depth when it comes to size.
Mhm.
And then also some additional scoring. I do think Lonzo coming back is going to help a lot with that, though. I think
For
he's
sure.
averaging, 14 points per game before he got injured. He's a great 3-point shooter. So, uh, the main focus is DeMar's probably not going to have the season that we saw this year, next season. So what do you do as far as getting those added offensive pieces to make up for maybe some of that scoring, but also the defensive side, because that's been the biggest struggle more recently.
Definitely. Definitely. Well, there you go. That was a great answer. Before we go, I got two questions left for you. We got
Yeah.
Miami coming up as of when this video will be posted tonight. Um, what do you how much of what the Bulls did last night do you think carries over the momentum that they had into the game against Miami? Do you think that Billy Donovan unlocked something with that lineup of having Patrick Williams being the starting lineup after that first half? What do you think the Bulls look to change in the remaining 5 games of the season from what they learned last night against the Clippers?
Well, I think what they've learned last night is that if Patrick Williams can play the way that he did last night, um, that's a huge win because it
Yeah.
gives you that size that you need. He had 12 rebounds last night. That's been a big issue for the Bulls, is rebounding, especially offensive rebounding. And if he can play the level of defense that at least we saw in his rookie season, that is a huge unlock for them, because trying to get Javonte Green to do that, which he's been incredible, by the way. I love Javonte Green,
Me too.
but he's 6'4". Trying to get Alex Caruso to play power forward, DeMar DeRozan to play power forward, it really limits the Bulls and their ability to play against some of these bigger teams. Not that the Heat for tomorrow are a big team, but Bam Adebayo is an incredible player,
Yeah.
and that's really what they've struggled with when they've gone against the Heat. And so I think that unlock is going to help them for these 5 remaining games, and that Patrick could be a very, very valuable piece when
Mm,
you put him at that power forward spot. And then for the game, I guess if you're putting it tonight, so tomorrow, I think that the key is really going to be, how do you continue to crash the boards against a team that is maybe not necessarily the best rebounding team, but they're a very smart team in the way they play basketball. They're very
mhm.
veteran savvy with guys like Jimmy Butler, Kyle Lowry. How do you go about matching that level of basketball IQ? And it is going to be a lot on Billy Donovan to make those necessary adjustments. Because I feel like every time that we've played the Heat this season, Spo has just outcoached Donovan. he makes the necessary adjustments. He plays
Yes.
zone defense. The Bulls are like, what do we do with this? What, zone defense? What are we gonna? How are we gonna address this? And Billy Donovan just doesn't know what to do. And it's not a knock on Billy Donovan because I do think that he is overall a decent coach. But I think that's going to be the biggest thing. Is Donovan going to be able to make the necessary adjustments and rotations that are going to be able to match what Eric Spoelstra is doing? But I think the game from last night is going to translate well into, here's something that worked for us. Let's continue working with it, see what it does against some of these better teams, because it's not just the Heat. They've got the Bucks following that. Then they've got the Celtics, and making sure that if we can keep moving on this type of momentum, that it'll continue to translate into the playoffs. I don't know if you asked who I got tomorrow. I still think that the Heat are probably going to win the game.
Okay.
But I also would not be surprised for the Bulls to come out with a win after that type of performance that they had last night against the Clippers. Also because the Heat, to an extent, have sort of been slumping a bit. There's been some contention on their bench that has
For
caused
sure.
some issues.
Yeah.
So maybe the Bulls can kind of ride with that and take advantage of that. But I do still think that they're the better team and they have the better coach as well.
All right, yeah. I mean, the Miami Heat are playing great. And like you said, I don't like our matchup against them the best, but I think the Bulls, if they can get back to playing with like that heart and determination that they play with, they can punch well above their weight with anybody in this league. Um, Billy Donovan does Spo has Billy Donovan's number. Let's just be
Right.
real. So far on what we've seen. But yeah, I hope the team that they really come out with a lot of heart and they play well and they focus. And they also, if they can go to Vooch early, that's one of the things that we've seen over the course of the season is that when Vooch can get going, it unlocks so much more with this offense. And for a long time, it seemed like Billy Donovan would go to him in the first half and then not in the second half, which always drove me crazy. So, we'll see if Vooch can have some success because very much so when Vooch has success, it makes a lot of things easier for us.
Yeah, and you saw that even last night too, right? Like
Yeah.
Vucevic did really well in the really to start off the game in the first quarter, and then they just weren't really going to him a ton in the second half. You're right. I don't know. I don't know what's been going on with that, but I've said before on my channel, Vucevic is really kind of the X factor on this team, and the
Yeah.
reason for that being is that if they're you know feeding him, they're making sure that he's active, that he's being aggressive. Having a big man that can put up 20 points per game and get 13 rebounds per game, not saying that that's what
Mhm.
he's averaging, but we know that he's capable of doing that. That's a game changer when you already have someone like Zach Lavine and DeMar DeRozan. Like even against the Heat, you look at the team side by side, the Bulls have more talent than the Heat do overall.
Yeah.
Doesn't mean that they execute on it all the time, and the Heat obviously have a lot more veteran savvy players, but still, I don't know. So I agree with you. It's like it is a little frustrating sometimes when you don't see Vucevic getting as involved. Some of it's on him, and some of it's on coaching, and that they need to be making sure that they draw up plays for him.
For sure. For sure. All right. Any who who on this team has been the biggest outside of DeMar? Who's been the biggest surprise for you this season, either positive or negative?
Um, I was gonna initially say Io.
Uh-huh.
I'd probably still stick with Io. I was gonna mention Javante Green because I don't think anyone
Yes.
expected Javante Green to be such a key glue guy for this team. I mean, when he was out for the few games that he was out, the Bulls looked really bad. And I'm not saying that was all on Javante Green because I think Zach Lavine was out at that time. Lonzo was out for a portion of that. I think Alex Caruso was out too. So I'm not saying it's all on
Mhm.
Javante Green, but he's just been such a key player in doing anything and everything that the team needs him to do.
Absolutely.
And the energy that he brings, the athleticism that he brings, I feel like really goes unrecognized a lot by Bulls fans, even to myself. Like I feel like I don't call him out enough for that, and so I think that's kind of been the biggest surprise because last year when we traded for him, he wasn't even in the rotation initially until the
Yeah.
very end of the season, and then the Bulls re-signed him. He's like on what, like a veteran minimum, probably
Yeah.
like $1 million a year, something like that. And so when you look at the value that he's been able to bring relative to his contract, that's what's been a big surprise to me because I didn't expect him to put up this kind of value and impact for the team. But Io for sure. I was telling Tony Gill this yesterday. I didn't even think Io was going to get that many minutes this season, just because a second round pick. Not saying that he didn't have the talent and potential there, but it was
Mhm.
also because the Bulls had signed Lonzo Ball. They signed Alex Caruso.
Yep.
Kobe White being out, I think, helped that initially at the beginning of the season, because then that gave Io some playing time and it showcased what he can bring.
Mhm.
But then with Kobe coming back, I was like, where is Io even going to be able to get playing time? Because they're not going to play Io over Kobe, right? They're not
Yeah.
going to play Io over Lonzo or Caruso. Uh, and then you saw Io really kind of win that starting spot over Kobe once Lonzo Ball got injured. And so he's been the biggest surprise by far, mainly because he was a second round pick. I don't think people expected him to play with the kind of confidence and playmaking that he does.
Mhm.
And so that for me, like I said, aside from Demar DeRozan, because I think that's probably the biggest surprise for most Bulls
Definitely.
fans. Aside from Demar, Io's been the biggest surprise of this Bulls team for sure.
For sure. Io is just I said in my preseason preview, and people they bring this up all the time because I said if we see a lot of Io DeSumo this season, something's either gone very, very wrong as far as injuries to somebody, or something's gone extremely right, and that Io is way above what I was expecting at that time. And I'm glad that it was the latter rather than the former
Yes.
because yeah, I did not expect Io to get a lot of minutes. As a second round rookie, I really expected him to probably even be in the G League or maybe get spot minutes. And he
Yeah.
with through his defense and determination, he earned minutes early in the season, and then his role has just continued to grow and grow and grow. And yeah, I mean, there's been some issues. He still makes some rookie mistakes, and it seemed like he hit maybe a rookie wall here lately. But the potential from Io is really through the roof as well right now.
Yeah, and this, because I'm always happy to admit when I have a horrible take. At the beginning of the season, I do these like Bulls awards. Who's going to be the MVP for the Bulls?
Mhm.
Who's going to be the best six man? Who's going to have the best rookie season? And really, it's between Simonovic and Io. Those were the only two
For
rookies.
sure.
I said Simonovic. Marco Simonovic was going to have a
Wow.
better rookie season than Io. And the only reason I said that was because I thought Simonovic was going to get more playing time,
Yeah.
because at that time, that was before we got Tristan Thompson. We just signed Tony Bradley, and I was like, okay, Tony Bradley's going to back up Vucevic. And then there's Patrick Williams. Uh, I was like, they don't have any other bigs. So Simonovic is probably going to see more time on the court than Io would, because the backcourt was so crowded. So I could not have been more wrong there, and that's why I love going back on my old videos and seeing how well they age. But that was one where I was like, damn, that was pretty bad. I thought Simonovic was going to have a better rookie season than Io, and that guy has barely played this season, and he's just been
Yeah.
spending most of his time in the G League. But
Yeah.
anyway,
Yeah, we'll see what happens with Simonovic. I've watched a lot of G League games specifically to see him and his development. He's definitely developed and gotten better, and that 3-point shots come along. But he's gonna have to put on some weight because in the few games we've seen him in, it's just he 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 doesn't have the body right now to be banging
no.
with bigs in the NBA. So
No, not at all. But you're right though. He is developing. He's getting a lot better, and he's still really young. I think he's 21 or 22. So, I think he can get there. But yeah, the biggest thing is he's got to figure out how he's going to be able to go against some of these massive dudes in the
yeah.
NBA, because it's not like it was in the Euro League. That's for sure.
That's for damn sure. All right, one final question. I'm trying to ask this question to any Bulls content creator that I do collabs with. Um, what is your favorite memory while in your time of being a Bulls
It's going to be such a cliche answer.
fan?
But I mean, it was Michael Jordan's final shot in Game 6, and the reason I say that one was one of my favorite memories is because I was a kid then. I
Yeah.
was 12 years old at the time. Realized I'm dating myself, but any memories you have as a kid are always going to be more nostalgic, and so you just
Yeah.
kind of that sits with you. And yeah, I remember it just being like, I know he's going to hit this shot, because you got so used to Michael Jordan hitting those clutch shots. And I remember like sitting with my dad and my sister, who's a bit younger than me, and just like freaking out like a little kid. Like, that's it. Like, that's the game. They've won their sixth championship, and so it's also just a good memory, because as a kid you're always you always have fond memories. And yeah, I don't think that there's anything else as far as like a memory that really sits with me in my Bulls fandom other than something like that. And I think, again, it's because their last championship. Obviously, there have been others that have come about as well. Derrick Rose's game-winning shot and against the Cavs in 2015. They didn't win that series though, so that's why it's not as memorable for me.
Exactly.
And Derrick Rose winning the MVP after going so many years without having a superstar on the team, after the Michael Jordan years, that was obviously very memorable. But I just don't think you can top that final shot, Game 6, 1998 against the Jazz. I just don't think you can. What about you, though? I'm curious.
So the game-winning shot against the Jazz, I was, to date myself, I was 6 then, so I remember it.
Okay.
But I don't because I was aware of. I watched basketball with my dad. Literally, some of my earliest pictures are sitting on my dad's lap watching Chicago Bulls games, and I remember that game very vividly. But for my memory, when this team became my team, and it's going to be a completely funny moment, it's actually when the Bulls drafted Joakim Noah. And the reason why that's one of my favorite moments, and not on the court, is because I literally was pissed off when the Bulls drafted Joakim Noah. I didn't see it for him. I didn't want him on my team. I hope that I remember at that time there were like some rumors that, oh, well, maybe they're drafting Joakim Noah to really trade him to the Grizzlies for Paul Gasol. And I was like, yeah, do that. But by the end of his rookie season, and definitely during his second season, I had turned so around on Joakim Noah that it's such a memory that sticks out to me, because that's a player that had to literally earn my love for them. And now he's my second favorite Bull of all time. So that's definitely always going to be a memory and a moment for me. But a favorite in-game memory, and this is my oldest son. He's 16 now. I think he had to be like 5 or 6 at the time. Derrick Rose, I lived in St. Louis at the time, and the Bulls had a preseason game against the Memphis Grizzlies in St. Louis in our arena. So of course I had to go, and it was Derrick Rose's first game back from his ACL tear. And so that is a special moment with me and my son watching that game. He had on his Derrick Rose jersey. I had on my Derrick Rose jersey, and it's just a special moment for us. He didn't, it's a preseason game, but to see Derrick Rose on the floor, to see Derrick Rose in person, and to see that moment of him coming back after being out a year and a half with my son, that's always going to be my favorite moment.
So. Yeah, that's a good point, actually. And I don't remember the preseason return of Derrick Rose, but I do remember that first regular season game he had, and when he first touched the ball, because they were playing at the United Center, and the crowd just went like crazy, and I was like, wow, this is pretty special. The guy had been out for so long, and here he got injured again that season and didn't play a ton, but it was still a very special moment. It's funny you're talking about Joakim Noah. Very similar to in terms of my view. I did not want that guy, partly because I really didn't like him in college. I mean, he was a pretty hated player in college. A lot of people didn't like him, right? Because of how I mean, even in the NBA, a lot of people didn't like him. But when he's on your team, it's like, I love this dude. I didn't want Noah, and he, like you, is also my second favorite Bulls player of all time. Behind Michael Jordan. Which even to an extent, sometimes I put Noah ahead because it's like, Jordan, you can't. He has to be your favorite player of all time. But it's like, Noah, what I loved about him was just that fire in him, that passion that he played with, because I'm like that as a fan. I like watching players that are like that. And just a good, funny dude. I wish I could have been there on the night that they had the Joakim Noah night, but it was funny that you were saying that, because it's like, I really didn't want that guy when they drafted him, and then he ended up becoming one of my favorite players of all time, and still love the guy to this day.
It's so funny. Like my dad still brings it up. He's like, you remember how pissed off you were when we drafted? Anytime anything goes left now and I don't like something the Bulls do, he's like, well, you remember Joakim Noah? I'm like, Dad, everything isn't going to work out the way that Joakim Noah worked out. Let's be clear with that. But yeah, man, that's just such a he turned into such a great player for us, man. And I wish he would have never wore another jersey. I'm one of those people who, like, I'm weird about that, about players wearing other jerseys, but man, Joakim Noah's time here and then what he meant to the city and still means to the city is just special.
The way I look at it, he played his best years in Chicago. After he went to New York, and then he had a couple stints elsewhere. Obviously, he wasn't the same player. You know what I mean? And he'll always be remembered as a Chicago Bull. That's how I view it, anyway.
Definitely. Well, Jamal, thank you so much for taking time out your day, man, to join me for this great conversation. Sure. Hopefully, you come back at some point. For those who don't know, though, tell them where they can find you before we head out.
Yeah, no, Bulls Central on YouTube. You can also follow me on Bulls Central YT on Twitter. And I also have Instagram. I'm just not that active on there. But
Yeah.
no, Haize, appreciate you making the time, man. Love the work that you're doing. Keep up the great work on Locked On Bulls as well. Both you and Pat are
Appreciate that.
doing incredible on there. And absolutely, let's stay in touch. I'll have to have you on my channel as well sometime soon.
Anytime, man. Anytime. I appreciate you, brother.